Getting started with Scribble is easy. Now, after signing into Scribble on your main book page, you can add a new book by clicking on Add New Book. Now from here, you can give your book a title, a type, a draft. Now I'll just set mine to 60,000 words as my word count. Now here you can also put your book's theme as well as your summary. Now over to the right, you can either upload your own book cover if you have one, or you can use the built-in AI book cover generation tool. Now if you don't have a cover or you don't want to use the AI book cover generation tool, you can just leave the cover section blank and we'll generate a default cover for you. But in this example, let's use the AI book cover generation tool because it's fun. So for example, if you were writing a science fiction or fantasy novel, you might type in something like futuristic mountain village in the Amazon jungle. Next, as an art style, I'll select surreal, and then I'll select the number of covers I want to generate. Now keep in mind that free accounts are limited to a very small number of AI runs, while pro accounts can generate many AI covers each month. So here I'm on a pro account, so I'm going to generate 5 covers using this prompt. Now, after a few moments, the results will show up down here, and then you can select your preferred cover by clicking on this button here. Now, when you do that, you'll also notice that the cover shows up here as well. Now, when you're ready, you can just click on Create Book. Now that your book is created, you'll see it show up on your main book catalog page. Now, if you wanted to edit any details about your book, you could do so by clicking on this Edit button here. Or if you wanted to change the associated AI book cover, you could click on this image icon here. Now here, you could either download this image and then edit it by adding text using your favorite image editing software, which you could then re-upload later. Or you could just simply click on Set as Cover to swap out your current cover with one of the other covers that were generated during the cover generation process. Similarly, you can always try to create new book covers by entering a new prompt and styles here. All newly generated art will show up down below. The progress bar you see here will show you how close you are to your monthly AI runs. Now be conservative with the number of book covers you generate because you can also use these AI credits later to generate both AI character avatars as well as AI generated worlds. Now, once you're ready, you can start writing your book by clicking on the book cover or this little icon here. Now this is your main writing pad, which you can always find over in the sidebar here. Now we can begin by adding a chapter. So let's get started by adding our first chapter. Here I'll add my chapter title, my plot point, my chapter number, my tension score, which is essentially just a rating out of 10 of how much tension exists in the scene. Now your climax will be a 10 and everything else will just kind of be scored in comparison to that tension level. So here it's our first chapter, so I'm just going to select 1. Next, notice as you change your act, the chapter options change over to the right. Now this will help give you some general writing direction if you need it. Now notice that we have acts split up into 4 parts. Act 1 is the beginning of your story. Act 2A is the first half of the middle of your story. Now during this half, your protagonist is generally a bit more passive. Now during Act 2B, the protagonist generally acts less like a victim and is a bit more active in the pursuit of their goal. And then of course, Act 3 is your story's ending. Next, I'll add the chapter location as well as my target chapter word count. Lastly, I'll add a short chapter summary and then I'll click on Add Chapter. Now that my chapter is added, I'll be able to start editing my text by clicking on this icon here in the top right corner. Now to begin, I'm going to edit my font and font size here. Now for my taste, I'm going to set it to Allegria and large. Now, if I don't want to add my chapters individually, but instead use a plot template, I could do that too. Now notice, however, that because I've added a chapter already, when I click on add another chapter, the template option doesn't show up here. And that's because books have to be empty in order to use this feature. So let's delete this chapter here. And now when I click on add chapter, you'll see this option to use a template. Now when I click on Use Template, my book will be populated with a 24-chapter book template with a structure and summary general enough to give you a lot of room to fill in the specific details. And of course, you can change every detail of this template, delete chapters, rearrange them, and so on. Now let's click on this chapter, and then over to the right, you'll notice that you can see your chapter progress bar over here. Now, since I set my target word count to 2,500, every time I write and then click out of this editor box, this progress bar will update as well. You'll also notice another progress bar up here, but the difference is that this progress bar gives us a zoomed out perspective by monitoring the progress of our 60,000 word novel. This progress bar over here is our chapter progress bar and represents how far along we are in hitting our 2,500 chapter word count goal. Now this gives us both a zoomed out as well as a zoomed in perspective. The chapter progress bar is helpful because you'll actually see the progress bar move substantially on a daily basis, and this can really help with writing motivation. In the right-hand sidebar, you'll also notice your word count, target word count, estimated number of pages, estimated number of reading minutes, as well as your book collaborators and chapter summary. Now, on the other hand, in the top bar up here, this represents your book level progress and top level details like your book level word count, number of pages, and book reading time. Also, notice I can use this drop down here to filter based on acts. Now, each act is represented by a different color, and you can hover over this icon here to see the act's plot point. Over in the right sidebar here, you'll also notice more tabs. Now, beside the chapter summary tab, you'll see a scratch pad. Now, this is where you can essentially jot down any notes or ideas you have about your chapter. Now, beside that, you have your chapter checklist. Now, you can mark each of these as complete as you go through the chapter. So, for example, here, I'll check off that I scanned my chapter for adverbs and adjectives to see if I could replace them with stronger verbs. Now, if you don't know what a checklist item means, you can simply click on it for a more detailed description. Beside your chapter checklist, you have cut notes. Let's say, for example, if you're not sure this first paragraph is right for this chapter, and you're really on the fence about removing it because you don't want to lose it, so what you could do instead is you could just cut it and add it to this cut note section. This allows you to temporarily remove pieces of your chapter while you experiment with another approach. However, if you wanted to reincorporate that paragraph later on, you could simply find it and then re-add it here. And lastly, this final tab allows you to upload mood board images that allow you to visualize your scene a little better. Now, as you progress with your writing, you might want to change around the order of your chapters. Now, that's easy to do by clicking on this chapter order link here. Simply grab the chapter you want to move and drag and drop it into its new position. This will update your chapter position in other parts of the application as well. For example, over on the tension flow page, you'll remember that we're giving each chapter a score out of 10. Now, on your tension flow page, you'll see those scores visualized. However, when you move chapters around on your chapter order page, those changes will impact this tension flow chart as well. Now, in a nutshell, this tension flow chart helps you visualize the dramatic pacing of your novel. Next, you can also add characters to your book by clicking on People and Places. Now here, you can add characters with avatars generated from our AI character generation tool. So for example, let me add a new character here. I'll name my character and give them some attributes. I'll make them a 40-year-old Italian professor wearing glasses and wearing an overcoat. Now here are the results I get when I run this prompt. Now at this point, it's also really important to determine if a character is your primary character, a secondary character, or a background character. It's also really important to determine if they are on the protagonist or the antagonist side. Now I'll tell you why this is important in a moment, but for now let's just move on. Now once I've created my character, I can always change my character avatar by clicking on Edit here, and then swapping the character profile image out for a new one, or even generating more images for this specific character up here. Also, as good writing revolves heavily around character, we have a comprehensive character worksheet for each character you add to your book. For example, if I click on this character here, I could design this character from the ground up. Now here I can add the character want, need, obstacles, and so on. I can also plan the character arc here and pre-plan the character ending using this ending quadrant down here. Now after adding characters, you can also add this character to any chapter now by going back to your writing pad and then clicking on this character tab here. All characters created for this book will show up here. You can simply add the characters you want to add to this chapter by clicking on this button. Then back on your chapter page, you'll notice all of the characters you've added show up here. You can also do comprehensive world building by adding places and locations to your story as well. Just click on places and then add location. Here, I'll type that I want a futuristic desert village. I'll select this as my main location. Now notice here, when I've added a main location and not just a basic interior or exterior, I can add a summary as well as write details about this location's specific history, geography, politics, and so on. However, I can also easily add interiors or exteriors as well. For example, I'll type that I want to create a bohemian bedroom with a large window overlooking a lake. I'll mark this as an interior. However, now when I go to edit it, notice that I don't see the tabs for culture or history or anything like that. So when you're dealing with world building, be sure to select main world to see these detailed options that you see here. And again, if I generated multiple AI images when I created this place, I can swap out the image I'm using by clicking on New Image. Here I can select the new image to use as the default image, or even just create more location images up here. Then as you get further and further into your story, you're going to want to see how your scenes flow in and out of each other. Now for that, you can click on Plot Visualization. Here you'll see a summary of each of your chapters side by side, and in the upper right hand corner of each scene card, you can also see if a scene represents a plot point. Now below that, you can see which characters play in your scene, and below that, this progress bar represents how far you have to go to reach your chapter word count goal. You can also keep an eye on your writing productivity by clicking on this productivity link here. Here, the application will show you how many words you're writing for this book each day. Now let's jump in here to story base. This is really the foundation of your story. It's really important to fill out this page early in the writing process because it will help guide you as you enter into the thickness of your story, particularly the second act of your story. Now this page will always give you a clear overview of the story you're trying to tell. Here is your story's main theme. This is essentially the thing that's important for you to communicate, the main idea essentially that you want to express to the world. Then below that, you have the body of your story with the protagonist and their side and the antagonist and their side. Now, when adding characters, if you selected that character was a primary character, you'll remember, then they will show up here. Now, if they were a secondary character, then they will show up down here. Now, if you selected that they were primarily a force on the protagonist side, then they'll show up on the left. Now, if they were primarily a force on the antagonist side, then they'll show up over here on the right. In the middle is the main goal that the two sides are fighting over. Now, most writers often don't think that the antagonists want the same thing as the protagonist, but in most good stories, they are in fact fighting over the same thing, but just have fundamentally different ways about achieving their goal. So here you can write the moral or philosophical differences in their approach when it comes to achieving that goal. You can also edit each character by clicking on the character profile here. Now remember, it's important to ensure that your protagonist not only faces obstacles from the antagonistic side over here, but also within the protagonist's own group of allies which exist over on this side. You can also assign an image to each side which represents that side's world. Sometimes these worlds are similar, and sometimes these worlds are vastly different. Below that, you can map out your ending. This way, from day one, you know the direction you're heading towards. This, combined with theme planning and character arc planning over on your People and Places page, is a great way to determine the overall direction of your story early on. This helps you solve a lot of the second act problems where writers frequently get stuck. Now, when you're ready, you can click on Export Book. Now here, all of your chapters will be organized, and you can copy and paste your book into whatever publishing format you desire. Now, if you enjoy using Scribble, then simply head over to your account at any time to upgrade your account to a pro plan. This plan will allow you to create unlimited books, to collaborate with others on projects, and give you many more AI art runs for when you're creating book covers, characters, and worlds. So that's it. Have fun and get writing.